Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goët.
Mike Barnacle, there's just absolutely no coordination on anything that's said. They're constantly changing their story. This is a sort of thing, again, that Donald Trump may be able to get away with when he's just sending out tweets and he talks about fake news. But as you've seen, when you go into court proceedings, they have timelines and they have statements. And they write down the statements. This is what he said on January the 5th. This is what he said on, February the 2nd. This is what he said on March the 4th. I mean, you go through the timeline of this. This is going to be devastating for whomever the defendant is when they finally get in court, whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's Michael Cohen. They can't keep their stories straight. And for me, it's just baffling. A Little League baseball team would be able to get their stories more straight than the President of the United States and this Confederacy of Dunces.
Yeah, Joe, Jeremy alluded to the President's legal strategy, wondering what it is. Emmett Flood is not there yet to preside over the legal strategy. He is a legitimate professional. He probably will bring some coordination to that legal strategy. But right now, I'm told last night, that the legal strategy the President and Rudy Giuliani are employing, the legal strategy is fear. They are desperately afraid that Michael Cohen is cooperating with the special prosecutor. And they are also convinced that the special prosecutor might have Donald Trump's tax returns, which would be a lethal weapon in terms of matching the president's rhetoric against actual fact-based stuff. What did he spend the money on? What was the $400,000 plus spent on? Did he deduct it? Things like that. So they are in a world of hurt, and they're waiting for Emmett Flood to come through the door.
It is Thursday, the 3rd of May of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. And oh boy, isn't it spicy today? Oh yes, indeed. Well, that was, I'm sorry, I don't normally lift Morning Joe, but I had to because he had the latest stuff, at least that I could grab. And Mike Barnacle, and he opined on this Confederacy of Dunces that comprises Trump's legal team. And as I say, I think that if you buy flood insurance at this late date, it's a little too little and a little too late, if you're going to mess up the metaphor like I just did. So, bringing in this Flood guy who is a impeachment lawyer. He worked. Now, you have to understand, he did work on Bill Clinton's impeachment defense. And last time I looked, Bill Clinton was impeached. So maybe they're saying, maybe they're betting that buying this flood insurance, to stem the deluge, of course, They are banking on possibly being impeached, but still holding on to office. Maybe that could be. I suppose he could just declare martial law. According to Trump, he has unfettered powers to do anything he wants, even levitate with, that's not 239 pounds anymore. And I think we probably have it on actual professional and scientific fact that mass is a little bit more dense than they've been laying on. I know. It is really just a big, gas giant. But, even gas giants have a certain density that, crushes things when you get to the middle of it. Well, I could go on that track, but I shan't. Because we have other news up, and it is just as breaking and confounding as Rudy Giuliani going on the TV, and I don't know, what was he doing? Was that really, was that purposeful? Was that a mistake? I did see, I think it was on Lawrence last night, a New York City reporter who has followed Rudy for decades, seemed genuinely upset in that, not that she's a Rudy fan, but, following the guy, you look at his quirks, and, some things can be endearing about people, even if they're, like a Rudy Giuliani. But she seemed genuinely concerned and upset about a decline. She didn't want to go too much into that aspect, but you could tell that, she stated he's not as sharp as he once was. Well, some of us might have considered him not be a very sharp tool in the tool shed to begin with, but, I think the people I ran around with had a much more exacting measure, and we were unfettered by journalistic restraint so that we were unable to figure out intent. Well, we knew exactly what the intent was, and we weren't afraid to, voice it. So, that's why I'm a poet and a singer-songwriter rather than, a true journalist. Got my opinions, but I am no expert on this stuff. I know a lot, but it's never enough. But what else are we going to be attending to on the show today? Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. No Old Bay. Same as in the chowder. On Tuesdays, on Thursdays, do not put Old Bay into the Metro Shrimp and Grits. Do not. Okay? Maybe some jerk seasoning. That'll be fine. But, jambalaya is a little bit, you'll see. Well, on the rest of the menu, a threatening letter to Panama's leader reopens Trump's Panama hotel debacle. Yeah, the White House apparently sent one of those horsehead on the bed letters. It didn't go well. A new pro-Trump SuperPAC ad presents Trump's smears of Jon Tester as actual sources. I just love the feedback loop. And there are people, let's just say, restricted in their abilities to discern the real world, who just fall for this. And they vote. And Trump's climate censorship prevents the CDC from preparing the public for insect-borne illnesses. Well, all of those insect-borne illnesses, if they are manifested out of climate change and heat fluctuations and humidities that didn't exist in areas before, well, that's just fake news, okay? Because it has been deemed from on high. After the break, we'll move to the chef's table, where the stunning ouster of the first female chancellor at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville gets ugly and feels like political payback. Well, yeah, it's Tennessee. They do that there. And Kris Kobach is making sure Kansas taxpayers will stay on the hook for all his contempt of court fees. That's what grifters do, folks. Every single time. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Bon appetit. You go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. You'll find on the rightish of the page the chat room link. It's there. It's a little, it's there among other really wonderful graphics. So check that out. Roaring Girl, Kelly Lincoln monitors that throughout the day. So engage with her, and she'll engage with you. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com are the Contribute Donate buttons. I should remind folks we are still in the process of migrating those accounts, so bear with us, and hopefully we won't have to request that you start all over again. We're just hoping to migrate them, but we'll see. But thank you for your generosity. We're paying the bills, and looks like we're banking, it's sitting there for us. We'll get to it. You can follow netrootsradio.com on Twitter at netrootsradio. And we are on Facebook. And I don't know. Now Tom takes care of Twitter, and we'll figure out how to take care of our Facebook page. We spend less time there. Sometimes I'll post there, cross-post there. But yeah, go to Twitter or the chat room. We'll be there. Let's see. Oh, yes. Follow me, of course, on Twitter at Justice Putnam. And that's N-A-M, man spelled backwards. Okay. Now, I looked at the social registry, and the Putnams, which I am a descendant of, were a much more, shall we say, educated class from the Putmans. And that's not to, throw any disrespectful light upon the Putmans. But, in the social registry, we were a tick higher. And we hold on to that. Because not all Putnams can cite Israel Putnam as being, their ancestor. Now, I fortunately can. But, who's Israel Putnam? Well, he was second in command to George Washington in the Continental Army, and said to have coined the phrase, "Do not fire until you see the whites of their eyes." And a lot of people say, no, that's wrong. He never said that on Bunker Hill. And we'll say, you're right. He never said that on Bunker Hill. He said it at Breed's Hill. And others will say, well, it wasn't even Israel Putnam who said it. And we always say, well, we say he did, and he did it at Breed's Hill. And since it was said at Breed's Hill, we hold on to, maybe Israel, Old Put, or as he was also known as, Old Wolf Put. But no one wants to say that, from the Putnam clan now, Old Wolf Put, because, the killing of wolves is really considered a bad thing. So we try to downplay that part of Old Put. But, yeah, we hold on to that, and so there. So, yes, do follow me on Twitter, Justice Putnam. Yes. And don't tweet until you see the whites of their lies, please. And there's a lot of lies out there, and they're really picking up. Have you noticed? Even the Russian troll and weird, all the usual suspects were out in force on Michelle Wolf. Yeah, speaking of wolves. Okay, and I got to tell you something else. Confederacy of Dunces by John Kennedy Poole is a great book. And, Morning Joe calling, Trump's legal team a Confederacy of Dunces, it's without the, dark humor. Okay, yeah, they are a Confederacy of Dunces, but without, the dark humor, but maybe emblematic of, the 2-bit failures and successes that, makes us, Americans. or denizens of the swamp, which is really what a Confederacy of Dunces is really about. Okay, a threatening letter. I always love threatening letters from mob bosses because, they can be used in a court of law, and apparently something has been delivered to the president of Panama. Okay, this is by Casey Michael or Michelle. Out of Think Progress. I only know what I read. After new hotel management booted the Trump organization from Trump's former high-rise in Panama, the dramatic episode, which featured scuffles between security guards, police, and body armor, and plummeting occupancy rates, appeared to be coming to a close. However, a letter issued in late March from a Panama-based law firm reopened the entire affair and cast Trump's involvement in a new light. The letter, first reported by the AP, was sent from the Britton and Iglesias law firm to Panamanian President Juan Carlos Varela. In it, the lawyers point to potential repercussions for Panama should Varela not intervene in the Trump organization's favor. It's unclear what specific steps the law firm wanted Varela to take other than intervening in judicial affairs. Well, normally in these kinds of communications, you wake up and something gruesome is, put on your bed and you had no knowledge of it being put there. You were asleep. And you woke up to this gruesome message. Wow, yes. Well, now, while the letter does not mention Trump, it hints that the White House might claim Panama was violating a bilateral investment treaty if it did not help the Trump organization's case at the building, which is now known as the Bahia Grande. To his credit, in mid-April, Valera dismissed the letter, telling the AP that the lawyers made a mistake in sending it. You have to leave your private interests aside and focus on the interests of your people. Okay. A spokesman for Britton and Iglesias told Think Progress that the law firm has not yet heard a response directly from Varela. Oh, so they did send it to him. The letter presents perhaps the foremost example of Trump's private interests conflicting with American interests abroad. Well, what about the World Cup, where he threatened UN nations? It'd be bad that your little pissant treaties might fall by the wayside unless you vote us in instead of some shithole country from Africa who's up next. How dare you? Okay, and it says nothing of requesting that Valera consider breaching his own country's separation of powers. Hey, you follow the rules and dictates of the mob boss that you get, not the mob boss you want. Okay, well, let's see. The lawmakers' letters follow a pair of other letters sent by Torres and Engel about Trump, Panama, and money laundering. This was Panamanian, representatives from California, New York, Nadler, Engel, and Torres, along with Trump Organization counsel Alan Garten, who received that letter from the three representatives, spelled out some questions that they have. And they concluded the letter with a series of requests, including asking for information about whether Britton and Iglesias sent its letter directly at the request of Trump or any other government official, or if Trump or the Trump Organization had made any other attempt to contact Varela regarding the ongoing dispute. Now, the Trump Organization has never been a philanthropic organization, and yet the Clinton Global Initiative has. And how is it that the Clinton Global Initiative has much more oversight and is deemed evil for helping people? But when you grift and act like a mob organization, you get a pass. Something is terribly wrong in Mudville. right, next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. Oh, you know what? I did fail to mention that you can get podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. So do. Well, it looks like America First Action SuperPAC's new ad is very misleading. Oh, yeah, that's a very secretive pro-Trump SuperPAC. Well, this is, Josh Israel out of Think Progress. Days after Donald Trump warned that Senator Jon Tester, Democrat of Montana, has to have a big price to pay for raising questions about Trump's now withdrawn second choice for Secretary of Veteran Affairs, a pro-Trump super PAC is trying to make that happen. A misleading new ad from America First Action Super PAC attempts to present Trump's own criticisms of Tester as sourced facts. God, I love this. Just bypass. Do this. Bypass Fox. You don't even have to have the middleman anymore. That's what Trump means. I can lie to people directly. I don't need to go through other people. I can if I want and when I need to, but generally I don't need to. The 30-second spot, called Disgraceful, well, isn't that some projection? Claims that Tester, who was up for re-election in November, spread false information about a respected Navy admiral helping D.C. Democrats derail Trump's Veteran Affairs nominee, Ronnie Jackson. And the ad shows quotes from various sources on the screen to attempt to support its view that it is time for Tester to go. I love how Trump says no one in Montana likes Jon Tester. What do you mean by no one? Give me a break, Zinke? He doesn't count. Because people love Jon Tester. I will admit, I have some issues with Jon Tester on certain things, but I have met the man. There was a meet and greet when he was in San Francisco, when he was first running, I believe. And there was a Daily Codes bash or group, San Francisco Cossacks to be exact. Thank you, Navajo. And and he was quite compelling and still is. And he works his own farm, so come on, Trump. He doesn't even know how to brand properly anymore. Okay, so these quotes are attributed to what Trump said. And of course, this ad cites it as a Fox News Insider, which is, there is the Fox News Insider program that apparently Trump called up to, or that it was reported through the Fox News Insider. But it's supposed to make you believe that there's some insider at Fox News that knows this stuff. Well, that insider is Donald Trump calling up. And who knows? Maybe he called up as David Dennison, or maybe he called up as John Barron, or maybe he just called up strictly as Donald Trump, because he can do that now. He's the president of the United States, unfettered to do what he wants to do. Here on the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays, is an article by Joe Rome, also out of Think Progress. Now, I am so old. I remember back in the day, the biggest lobby against chemical company regulations, where dump sites could be, all of that, were the drayage companies that trucked these hazardous materials and oftentimes would just dump them along river banks and whatnot. And I don't want to put, terrible aspersions upon drayage companies in general, but these particular drayage companies were mostly controlled by the mob. And they fought scientific results and papers tooth and nail, sometimes actually fighting it with tooth and nail. So it's interesting to see the current mob organization trying to put a damper on scientific research and the results of that research. Just shut up the people, the eggheads, and we'll continue doing what we do and make money. Who cares about fouling the environment? We'll be somewhere else. Well, pretty soon you run out of places to go. And they don't care. I mean, it's always just what's in the immediate. We'll take care of the immediate problem. To hell with what happened before and what's going to happen in the future. And you bungle ahead, and the next thing you know, well, you might be face down on a plastic-covered carpet in an empty room. You never know. Scientists have warned us for a long time that invasive species and tropical diseases will thrive and spread in a changing and warming climate. And until recently, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was very blunt that climate change was driving an increase in insect-borne illnesses. But the Trump administration has been censoring and deleting references to climate change by federal scientists, websites, and agencies since it took over. And that seems to extend to the CD as well, even when it is discussing one of the fastest growing threats to Americans' health. The CDC reported on Tuesday that the number of Americans catching diseases from mosquito, flea, and tick bites more than tripled in the past decade. Its latest vital signs report explains that reported cases of insect-borne diseases like dengue, Zika, and Lyme have soared from 27,000 cases in 2004 to 96,000 in 2016. Worse, as the CD explains, the reported data substantially underestimate disease occurrences, since many cases go unreported or misdiagnosed. But the report fails to mention climate change or warming temperatures as having anything to do with the increase. So just, continue living, and God meant it this way. Just pay up before we kick you out of the restaurant, okay? So, thank you. Thank you for censoring that. I guess ignorance is bliss, isn't it? We don't want to know what's killing us now, do we? All right, let's get to our break, and we'll come back and we'll go through weather from around the world, and then we'll finish up with the stories that we have definitely curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Steve Mirsky.
In a couple of decades from now, Africa is going to be the powerhouse of human capital globally, the youngest continent in terms of demography.
Thierry Zuma-Hun, he's the president and CEO of the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. He spoke with Scientific American editor-in-chief Mariette Di Cristina, who recorded these comments at the recent World Economic Forum in Davos.
Africa is going to be the global hub for science discoveries in this century. And how to make this happen is going to take three things, in my view. Number one, we've got a massive pool of untapped scientific talent, which a wave of youngsters which are coming. What we need to do is to provide these young people with the ecosystem within which they can flourish as great scientists and successful scientists. Ecosystem meaning training, give them the right training, give them research infrastructure for them to be able to come up as a great scientist. So second thing this is going to take is a conducive policy environment. Political leaders, industry leaders must join forces to come up with policies which are conducive for science in Africa. And lastly, global collaboration around science. We need the American continent, the European continent, all continents to join forces around Africa to collaborate effectively, researchers from the West and Africa to collaborate around some of the grand challenges which necessitate breakthrough research.
For Scientific American's 60 Second Science, I'm Steve Mirsky.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Today we begin a brief series on Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States. Abraham Lincoln is a symbol of democracy. His stirring story of hard-won achievements occupies a primary place in America's heritage. Lincoln's story began in Kentucky on February 12, 1809. Born in a crude one-room log cabin, Abraham was the second child of Thomas and Nancy Hanks Lincoln. His parents were typical pioneers who had traveled west from Virginia to seek opportunity on the frontier. In the fall of 1816, when Abraham was 7 years old, his family moved north across the Ohio River to acquire 160 acres of land in the wilderness of southern Indiana. Abraham's mother died in 1817, and his father married Sarah Bush Johnston, a widow from Kentucky who nurtured her stepson's ambition. Although his formal education was sporadic and limited, amounting to less than 1 year of school, Abraham acquired an abiding love of reading. Many years later, he wrote, "A capacity and taste for reading gives access to whatever has been discovered by others." Lincoln's lifelong commitment to learning was his key to self-improvement. That's all for today's podcast. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour report recorded on Thursday, May 3rd, 2018. I'm Mark Belanger. May 3rd is Press Freedom Day, a day established by the United Nations to remind people about the importance of journalism to democratic societies. The global organization which represents journalists is the International Federation of Journalists. The IFJ is the largest association of journalists in the world, with some 600,000 members in 140 countries. Its goal is to defend press freedom and social justice through strong, free, and independent trade unions of journalists. I talked to Anthony Bélanger about the IFJ and its work. Mr. Bélanger is the General Secretary of the IFJ. I spoke to him on the day that 10 journalists were killed in Afghanistan. I asked him if respect for freedom of the press has been improving or deteriorating.
Press freedom today is still as threatened or even more threatened than before. Journalists were killed again this morning in Kabul, as you know, in a suicide bombing. And I'm still waiting for the final assessment from my colleagues in Afghanistan, but I'm sure it will be very heavy and at least 9 killed journalists today, and it's terrible. Terrorist dressed as a journalist before detonating his bomb. We mourned our colleague of AFP, Shai Marai, who was killed this morning, and it's a very sad day for us, for journalism, and sad day for freedom of expression. We live in a world where journalists are increasingly targeted. Last year there were fewer deaths, 83 deaths, all the same, but there is more and more violence, threats, and imprisonment of journalists. The largest prison in the world remains Turkey, of course, with over 150 journalists in prison. For them it's terrible, and for their family, of course. The most complicated region for us remain the Arab world and the Middle East, as far as South Asia, with Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan, of course.
How does the IFJ help journalists?
We help journalists in various ways. The first is the safety fund, which enables injured journalists or for the families of victims to live and to organize funerals. We always accept donations, of course. The second way for us is the work we do every week on safety training for journalists in the field. These trainings are held everywhere, including Iraq, Syria or Afghanistan. I was in Syria last year. I was in Iraq last year to organize this training. The third way for us is more global, and we are currently working with the profession, with the journalists in the world, to ensure that the United Nations takes a responsibility for the safety and protection of journalists. We are currently talking with the United Nations members states to pass a special convention on safety and protection of journalists at the UN General Assembly. The aim of this convention is to create a commission of 19 UN experts who will be able to work on the ground with the journalists, because too many crimes of journalists are still unpunished today. And as you know, impunity for journalists, but for everybody, impunity is the gangrene of the profession. And it's for this reason, with IFJ, but with all our colleagues from the profession in the world, we are working very hard to find a good way and to go after to New York to organize this international convention.
Now, full disclosure, the reporters at Radio Labour are members of Canada's media union, Unifor, which is affiliated to the International Federation of Journalists. But no, Mr. Bélanger and I are not related. And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Marc Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he'll bring the swagger back to the State Department.
But it's important. The United States diplomatic corps needs to be in every corner, every stretch of the world, executing missions on behalf of this country, and it is my humble, noble undertaking to help you achieve that.
Pompeo's words on his first day at the State Department headquarters in Washington, D.C., serve as a boost to America's diplomats after the tenure of his predecessor, Rex Tillerson, led to reduced morale and a sense that Tillerson did not speak for President Trump. And Trump himself is seeking to change that perception with Tillerson, appearing in person at Pompeo's swearing-in on Wednesday.
I have absolute confidence that he will do an incredible job as the nation's 70th Secretary of State. As Mike travels the world, he will carry out the greatest mission and highest duty of the State Department, to represent the interests of the American people.
And China's government is joining a chorus of other countries party to the Iran nuclear deal in calling on the Trump administration to stick with the agreement instead of snapping back sanctions on Iran later this month. China's foreign ministry spokesperson said Wednesday that officials in Beijing had made note of a recent presentation by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that alleged Iran was not complying with the 2015 nuclear deal, but emphasized that only the International Atomic Energy Agency can formally make that determination, and that the agency still believes Iran is living up to its commitments. German Chancellor Angela Merkel echoed that conclusion on Wednesday, urging Netanyahu to turn over any evidence he has of Iran's noncompliance to the IAEA. She went on to say Iran's ballistic missile program and support for militant groups around the Middle East should be dealt with by further international agreements, but she argued that should be done on top of the existing nuclear deal. Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. That's right, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. All right, are you comfortable? Let's begin with weather from around the world, and we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 47 degrees Fahrenheit. We are slated to go to a high, low 80s, mid 80s. I'm sorry, it's springtime. Overnight lows will be inching up into the low to mid 50s. I don't mind that one bit. In fact, I like it. So will my garden. And, oh boy, I got to get some pictures and I'll be posting them soon. I'm getting lots of color and I like that. Decided to sort of embrace my my elderly mom's idea of what I call whimsy. And that's being polite because somebody might just say it's a lot of disorder. But I've tried to put some order to it because there is, in spite of what 23andMe might tell my sister, I know for a fact that, we did trek in our ancestral beginnings. What? Is that redundant? Well, our ancestral origins. When we trekked across Europe, we did go through the dark forest. Yes, the Black Forest there. And so we do have a bit of that Teutonic sense for order. At least that's my excuse. But all kidding aside, I've embraced the idea of whimsy and have incorporated, my mom's lawn art. No, it's not what you think. We don't have the plastic pink flamingos. They were part of the landscaping back in the day, and I will confess that when I went out into the world and when I had to make a decision, say like for how to design a room, how to put a garden or a yard together. Now this isn't meant to be insulting, but you learn, right? You learn by doing. And I found out quickly that I would do a thought experiment. And I think, now what would my mom do? And I would do the exact opposite. And you know what? It worked. So kids, sometimes you got to go out there and you can either figure it out on your own or somebody is going to tell you that you have to stop with everything that your mom taught you and start over. Okay? And sometimes they force you to do that. Other people get lucky and, kind of figure it out. With a little bit of nudging, I must admit. Okay, so, boy, that was rather breathy, wasn't it now? A lot of hot wind coming through the valley. It is springtime going on summer. I think we're going to get pretty hot. But maybe it'll just be pleasant. Wouldn't that be nice? Winds are currently out of the south-southwest at about 3 miles per hour, moving to the northwest about 10 o'clock today here on the west coast, Pacific time, 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then out of the west-northwest tonight at a pretty good brisk 5 to 10 miles per hour. And looks like we will be having some warm winds for the foreseeable future here. Our temperatures will be hovering in the low to mid 80s in the next several days. We did have a forecast of rain for Sunday. They've now pushed that back into Wednesday and Thursday. We'll see. But there are storms out there in the Pacific pushing moisture this way, and we will be getting some rain, which I don't mind it. Okay, well, I do have a reading on air quality. Did not earlier. It is good at 22 parts per million. I'd like it better when it's, like down to 8 parts per million, but you get what you get. Looks like we have a bit of high pressure at 30.11 inches. Visibility is above 10 miles, and humidity is at 81%. All right, I don't mind that either. Okay, so now weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people plan to these personal purchased weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. The guy just outside of London is registering 62 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 63 and sunny. Paris in the spring. Rome is 67, partly cloudy, though actually that partly cloudy is full of thunder and rainstorms, and they have a thunderstorm advisory that will, not may, will affect infrastructure and their electric grid. Oops. Kiev is 86 and fair. Kabul is 66 and fair. Perfect drone weather in the spring. You know how the drones like to fly in the spring. Hong Kong is 72 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 63 and cloudy with rainstorms in the vicinity. Sydney, Australia is 69 degrees and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 51 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 84 degrees and sunny. And it looks like you have another active weather statement. And what is it? Is it going to be hot? I'm opening up your weather statement. What is it? I'm trying to open it. Oh, here it is. Ooh, that's once again high fire danger because relative humidity has fallen below 30%. And it's at 84 degrees hot. Hey, but that's New York. You know, I love New York in the spring too. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Okay, first up here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays is an article by Jack Stripling, writing in the Leadership and Governance section of the Chronicle of Higher Education. The sudden firing on Wednesday of Beverly J. Davenport, the first female chancellor of the University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Yes, it's 2018, and she was the first chancellor. The University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Just saying, okay? Now that stunned and angered her supporters on the flagship campus and raised the specter of more political retribution and legislative meddling in a state that has earned a reputation for it. At a minimum, it was another ugly breakup in a system where personal matters often get personal. At a minimum, it was another ugly breakup in a system where personnel matters often get personal. In a scathing letter that was made public yesterday afternoon, Joseph A. DiPietro, the system's president, detailed what he described as Davenport's significant shortcomings. She was, he said, a poor communicator, a bad team player, and someone resistant to necessary professional coaching. The only nice thing that DiPietro had to say to the chancellor, who enjoys significant campus-level support, was, "Dear Beverly." No doubt, Davenport has suffered self-inflicted wounds during the university's recent search for a head coach. For the football team, Tennessee appeared to accede to fan outrage and withdrew an offer to a leading candidate, inviting a public relations meltdown that raised deeper questions about the competence and confidence of the leadership in Knoxville. Now, of course, I know the football teams brings lots of money to the university, yada, 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 yada. Let's just not forget, please. It is an institute of higher learning. I suppose if they had a choice between the football team getting money from them or the Koch brothers, they'd do both. Okay. But is this chancellor's dismissal about a 6-month-old sports debacle? Not likely, and at least not entirely. Over the course of her brief time in office, barely a year, Davenport has been pulled into the culture wars and political spats that are common to Tennessee and many public universities across the nation. She sided against the governor, who wanted the system's universities to outsource their facilities operations. Oh, yes, privatize it. Everything. A move that some expected to drive down wages and hurt working conditions. Well, I wouldn't say expected. That's exactly, well, okay, expected. That's exactly what they wanted. She took heat for defending Sex Week, a student sex education program that has drawn fire from evangelicals and conservatives. Well, screw them. They're screwing themselves all the time. Look at them. She secured private funding for a gay pride center after the legislators stripped money for it from the campus's Office of Diversity and Exclusion. No private money when we don't want you to have it. Wants to outsource their facilities. So then she goes, okay, I'll secure private money for the Gay Pride Center. Well, not that. Many of those battles predated Davenport's tenure, but she did little to court conservative lawmakers who've had their doubts about Knoxville. Well, forever. Yeah, well, isn't it time to say, do your jobs, conservatives, and leave academe alone? I mean, really, academic freedom means unfettered from your, prurient readings of what education is. Yes, let's see. We're regarded as being like a Berkeley of East Tennessee, so the red state legislators find things to find fault in us, said Bouvet Lyons, president of the Faculty Senate and an art professor. Well, I would think being the Berkeley of East Tennessee would be a good thing. I got to tell you, Berkeley has some of the greatest cafes, and they represent everywhere in the world. Really, man cannot live on biscuits and gravy alone. Chancellor Davenport has come here and won the hearts of students and faculty, and she has done everything we have sought to do in terms of our academic and goals and mission. That was Bouvet who said that. This decision is going to be met with strong resistance from students and faculty and staff alike. Now, Davenport and DiPietro did not respond to interview requests. The president's blistering letter to Davenport spoke to long-standing tensions between the flagship, which enjoys a high national profile, and the system of 2 other campuses, a health science center, and 3 institutes. Who are those institutes? You have not acclimated yourself to the UT system. Oh, wait a second. Maybe I should affect the nomenclature of the region. You have not acclimated yourself to the UT system and still appear unwilling to try to understand or acknowledge the value of the UT system. I continue to detect that you and some members of your cabinet have an us versus them mentality. Really? Now, this is an old story for public university systems. Flagship campuses, which have grown in prestige and acclaim through research and athletics, are often criticized as being insufficiently collaborative within their systems. Some campuses have sought more autonomy or tried to break off on their own, and invariably there is conflict. Now, DiPietro's letter, however, personalizes this natural phenomenon of flagship system tension and attaches it to Davenport as a professional shortcoming, maybe even a character flaw. The relationship between us, as well as that between you and some members of your cabinet and some of my leadership team, continues to be unsatisfactory. More times than I find acceptable, there's been a lack of trust, collaboration, communication, and transparency in these relationships, and it has been counterproductive to the collective success of the university. Lyons, the Faculty Senate president, described the letter as, well, pretty insulting. And if I'm insulting people in the South with my terrible rendition of Southern nomenclature, it's really directed at DiPietro. Really. Believe me. Now, this isn't new for Tennessee. Jimmy G. Cheek, Davenport's predecessor, by all accounts, left of his own accord, but he endured the same political battles over gay pride and sex weeks. Sex week on campus. Yeah, Sex Week's supposed to be, down in Puerto Rico, but, that was really kind of devastated, so they couldn't go. Cozumel. I mean, who's going to go to Cozumel if you're going to lose your head? Literally. They take your head, display it on a pike. You can't really go down to Sex Week for, during Easter vacation then and there. So they were trying to have a, stay-at-home vacation. Here, let's have Sex Week during spring break here. No. See, that's what the conservative evangelicals think, is everybody's going to be bopping each other, when really what Sex Week is supposed to be about is, hey, kids, you're adults now, start thinking like adults. You're going to be partying. You better start thinking about the ramifications of your partying. And that means a gestalt sort of awareness about what it is to be prepared for all possibilities. Isn't that what university is supposed to teach us? And, of course, the evangelicals say, no, how else can we recruit these people to do our bidding? You're going to pray, girl, and you're going to pray good. What? Well, it seems that the students love Davenport. The faculty loves Davenport. The staff loves Davenport. But because of all that love, it just proves that she's a hippie. And hippies get kicked still in 2018 in Tennessee.
Dansez maintenant sous l'été, les pieds nus dans le sable. Dansez maintenant et jetez vos ennuis dans les vagues qui dansent.
Okay, well, finishing up is an article out of Raw Story by Sarah K. Burris. It looks like Kris Kobach's going to stick Kansas taxpayers with the court-imposed legal fee requirement that he has to pay to the ACLU and others for bringing these onerous lawsuits to try to keep black and brown people and anybody who might be a Democrat from voting. And he threatened the GOP-led Kansas legislator that it's going to cost them more to try to get the money out of them than just to pay it. And they are not happy about it. So check out that link and read the full story by Sarah K. Burris. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for today, but we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. That's right, indeed. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio for the rest of the day. Breaking news, of course. And who knows what breaking news has occurred while I've been doing this. I guess I'll find out in just a moment. So do stay tuned, and we'll meet up with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, avoir un latte goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus d'être tendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver.